And now, it's the Finding Your Spine podcast with host Chase Spears.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Finding Your Spine, a podcast where we call morally principled men and women to live and lead boldly in the truth. I'm here today actually with a good personal friend of mine, Brendan Regan. We both served together in the Army. We met in 2021 when he showed up here to Fort Leavenworth and kind of both lived through the Army's COVID fury together. And his is a story of perseverance, endurance, and making choices to start a whole new career on his own, and through a deep theological grounding. And I just knew that this would be a really great conversation to have. And I'm so excited you're willing to come in. Flew all the way in from Augusta today to hang out.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Like everybody, must hear your bio read.
Perfect.
It's the punishment that I put every single
Sure.
guest through. Brendan, beyond just being a great guy, is a Christian husband of nearly 14 years and is a proud father of 4 amazing kids. Lives happily with your family in Augusta, Georgia.
Yep, that's true. That is true.
You're a former Army intelligence officer who served for 13 years on active duty, transitioned out as a major. During the latter part of his career, starting from 2021, he stood up against the unlawful COVID mandate in the Army that was pushed with particular harshness on Fort Leavenworth under then General Ted Martin, and fought through an administrative battle and won and was able to continue his career. But as the Army, even though he won, the Army still found ways to harass administratively, as it's still doing to a lot of good military men and women. He finally decided to move on from his career on his own terms in 2024 from Fort Gordon, Georgia. Brendan now works as a chief operating officer for a private equity firm that acquires and invests in businesses across the United States. He holds a bachelor's degree from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and an MBA from Vanderbilt University. Enjoy some of the same things I do: physical fitness, getting outdoors, holding a bow from time to time, right?
There it is. Yeah. You have to. You got to get outside and enjoy God's creation. Otherwise, you get stuck inside and you kind of lose yourself.
You really do. Yeah, that was the best part of being stationed in Alaska, was the outdoors.
Yeah, I went to Alaska for my buddy's wedding, and it was in June, and that was a really cool experience. But never got stationed there. I hear a lot of polarizing things about being stationed in Alaska, the sunlight and whatnot. But yeah, everything's bigger in Alaska, right?
Dude, it's a whole nother scale.
Mm-hmm.
We loved it. Oh, I could just talk about that. I want to stop myself because I don't, I'll talk about Alaska the next
30-minute Alaska podcast.
Yeah, and Alaska is worthy of a podcast, but that is not the business we're here to do today. We're here to talk about your favorite subject, right? Talk about
perfect.
You. Yeah.
Well, I'm humbled to talk about myself. So thanks for having me. It's a great experience.
Yeah, no, it's great to reconnect, and I kind of want to set up the context. So I'd been here at Fort Leavenworth, which is in northeast Kansas. The whole Army knows about it because it's really kind of the crossroads of the Army for military officers. All the people who get higher rank, they come through here at least once and probably 2 or 3 times in their career, if nothing else, for schooling, like the Command and General Staff College as a major. If you get battalion and brigade command, you come back through for the pre-command course. If you become a general officer, some of the general officer courses are here. So it's really a crossroads. But in terms of the grander Army, it's a much smaller base, and you can live in Kansas City, which is nearby, and have no idea it's there. Mm-hmm. But we got connected there because I came here because of the Command and General Staff College. That's the same reason you came.
That's correct, yeah.
Right, and but the difference is I arrived in 2018, going into the course that graduated into 2019 before the whole era of COVID. You came here
the dark age of COVID.
The dark ages of COVID, and felt the full fury and wrath. And so let's talk about what was it like going into that? I mean, you started the course, and COVID was already a thing.
It was.
But it got progressively worse, especially for you and a group of people that I knew of as the Leavenworth 12.
Yeah. So I got here, it was either June, I think it was around June, probably June or July before the academic year. And I think the COVID So I was 21. COVID had obviously kind of died down, but it was almost like the administration, the administrative state was just winding up. And I think they came out with the vaccine mandate in August or September so a couple months after I got here. And we all knew it was coming. Like, it was this thing that was kind of brewing, get ready. I'm sure we might talk about some senior officers who were kind of getting us mentally ready to comply with the vaccine mandate that had not been rolled out. So I was kind of mentally preparing for this thing. And then the mandate came out, and I was forced to wrestle with that issue. And it was a tough thing to wrestle with. I've been kind of obviously recalling what was going through my head as I prepped for, what I wanted to say on the podcast. And it took me a couple months to really discern what was right to do. And then, when that vaccine mandate came out, it was, you've got to react to what the seniors are telling you to do, and what are you going to do with that? And that was just the start of the academic year, and the start of about 12, 14 months of a really awkward situation for me and my family.
And the harshness, I know I really began to see it after you graduated, and we'll get to that. I was out of the schoolhouse by then. Mm-hmm. I know the schoolhouse well. I spent a year of my life there. I was still stationed there. I still had relationships with people there who were on faculty. But I know from talking to you and talking to a lot of other people, friends of mine who were in the course at the time, that there was a particular amount of pressure really, really put on all the students there, including mm-hmm. yourself. Mm-hmm. And that it was made very clear, like, if you want your career, if you don't want us crushing you, you're mm-hmm. going to do exactly what we're telling you to do. And we are trained, really, as officers, you just do what you're told, right? Even though the credo is we follow all lawful orders, at the end of the day, culturally, you do what you're told because you're an officer, sure. right? And what was the beginnings of that like? Like, realizing, holy cow, this is unlike what I've seen in my military career before, your decade before.
Yeah, it was the Secretary of Defense's memo that came out. That was this is the new policy. That was pretty revealing. Obviously, it's an order. Hey, this is what we're going to do now as a Department of Defense. And I saw that, and I just kind of thought, oh no, like, this is actually happening. I had made my mind up that there was really a great evil behind all of this, and I didn't want to participate in it. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to do this. They came out with a mandate. Okay, this is now something that's coming for me. And then there was, I don't remember exactly when this was early on in the academic year, but we all got in, my whole class, so all 1,200 of us or whatever, 1,100, 1,200 of us, all crammed into one room, one auditorium. And the Commandant, I think that's his title, right? The Commandant.
We're talking about Don Hill?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking
Major
about.
General Don Hill, Director of Army University.
There you go. He said something to the effect of, "TikTok, it's coming. Get ready." And we're like, okay. So this obviously was before the mandate, so there you go. But I thought it was very odd that he would say that before it was even mandated. There was this institutional pressure to just comply before it became an order. Mm-hmm. Almost like you were being judged on if you were being a good little boy and getting in line and showing that you're part of the team and getting on board with the mission of every 100% vaccination. So that was really telling. It was this weird, almost like sinister pressure. It wasn't like, get ready for a deployment. Hey, the new PT test is coming out. Get ready for this. Like, you're going to have to do, a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups, and it's going to be harder. No, it wasn't like that. It was this, hey, we don't care what you think. You better get on board with this because you are all bought and paid for by the profession. And if you don't comply, you're not a good whatever. You're not a good officer. You're not a good teammate. You're not professional like the rest of us that have it figured out. So those two things, the auditorium briefing that we got, which, I'm just kind of sitting around looking like, man, I'm probably one of the 20% at that point that hadn't gotten it, maybe 30%, whatever it was. I hadn't gotten it at the time, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be awkward. And then the memo came out, and then I was, wrestling with, okay, what do I do? How do I react to this?
I don't think a lot of people realize that there's this idea, I think, well, the president decided it, and so therefore the Defense Department had to comply. But the Defense Department was working behind the scenes months in advance. The Pentagon wanted this. They were working to actually get the paperwork done and working with the attorneys to find the way to yes, which ultimately they did. And that's something that is a big problem within the military is JAGs not necessarily giving legal ethical advice, but giving the routes to how you want to do what you ultimately want to do. And of course the Defense Department, ultimately at the end of the day, when the Secretary of Defense, who as I'm told is pretty well invested in some of these companies, wants something done, the attorneys find a way to get to yes. And so that was just astounding to me to realize, man, they were like actually working this within the building. I mean, and we talk, and yet they talk about, well, we want to hear feedback from the field. We want to hear what the troops think. We want to hear about how it affects people. And I just can't help but wonder, and we'll probably never know unless there's a proper investigation done. But like, why? Why was it the Pentagon pushing so hard for this? Because the attitude that was expressed towards us was, hey, this is national policy. No, it wasn't national policy. DOD wanted this.
Yeah, it was almost, some people will say it was a litmus test, a test to see who would comply. Yeah, I can't exactly tell you what the motive was, other than that it was unjust, and obviously there was a lot of evil behind how it was handled. But man, looking back, we were thinking that these generals must have gotten into a room together or into some briefing where they were all brought in, and it was, kind of imagine this, but like every general is in there. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is how you're going to push this down people's throats, and you all are going to be on board with this, and we're not going to take no for an answer. And they were all just kind of sent out. It was almost like that happened. I don't know what happened behind the scenes.
I'm sure something like
that must have happened, because it was like everyone needed to get on board. And I was a major, I was 10 years in, so kind of a mid-level manager, not a colonel, definitely not a general, but at the point where you're expected to be very professional. And most people are gunning towards retirement as well. So retirement's at 20 years. So once you hit that 10-year mark, you're kind of setting yourself up for retirement. And that's in the back of a lot of people's minds. And if you don't do well as a major, you don't get promoted to the next rank, which is lieutenant colonel, which should be around the 16-year mark. And if you don't get promoted to lieutenant colonel, you can't retire, right? Because they'll just give you the boot as a major if you underperform. So every major is kind of viewed like, hey, you're part of this group that's going for life for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And
they said that at the beginning of my course. You are now a member of the profession of arms.
Yeah.
You're a 20-year officer. Act like it now.
Yeah. And it's great to be part of a team, and it's great to be part of a profession. But I mean, I was part of a profession like when I commissioned, right? I swore an oath. That was my commissioning 10 years before that. So I was definitely part of the profession and should have been treated like that beforehand. Granted, you don't really know what you're doing as a lieutenant, for sure, but you don't just become part of the profession because you now have to retire because this is your whole life. So there's this weird flip where it goes from you're driven by the service and the spirit of patriotism to, oh, now I'm kind of almost bowing down to the profession. It's this weird, I call it over-professionalization, which is a really dumb term to describe it. It's very kind of self-explanatory, but majors, lieutenant colonels, they view themselves so seriously that their whole mantra is, I have to take care of the profession and not, I have to defend liberty. Because defending liberty might not look like saying yes to everything. And defending liberty might mean you don't prioritize the profession, you prioritize individual liberty and freedom, and however that manifests, you got to take care of your family. But if you bow down to the profession, and the profession is now the higher calling, then there's a lot of things that are sacrificed because of that, and they shouldn't be. The profession is supposed to serve the purpose, the freedom, the liberty of the country and its citizens, right? So if the profession is not doing that, then you're really not serving a higher calling. You're serving an institution. And so unfortunately, I think the military has kind of been caught off guard. And I mean, we were kind of going down a rabbit hole with this, and I don't mean to ramble on this topic too much, but
No, it's relevant.
it was rife, or it was, I should say, ripe for a COVID incident where a lot of people were in line. A lot of people are mentally checked into the next 10, 15 years. A lot of people are holding on to that pension already, and they don't think they have anything on the outside. So they're committed. Whatever it takes to get there, I'll do it. And that doesn't lend itself well to resisting things that are unjust or tyranny or acts of courage, individual acts of courage. That doesn't fit well with that.
It's almost this mentality, and I saw this as a public affairs guy who was also a scholar on the side of the institution must win.
Mm-hmm.
The institution must win. That was one of the reasons that I was given when colonels would object to some of the writings that I was doing, where I was openly discussing, hey, we have this issue with integrity in the field, or we have this very well-known documented issue with honesty, or how we're departing from what our regulations are telling us to do. It was much of the blowback that I received was, whoa, you're making it look bad. And I'm like, because this is a departure from who we say we are. If we don't acknowledge that, we'll just continue down, this road, and it will get worse. And the deviation from our norms, from our values, from regulation, eventually from law, will just get further and further and further away. And it was just that attitude of, no, but the institution must win. The institution must win. Well, then what does the institution exist for if not to defend these ideals?
That's right. That's a great question. That's all it should exist for. Right?
Yeah.
It should exist for securing the liberty of individuals in the country, right? That's the purpose.
Yeah.
And I know you've talked about this in other areas, but Constitution training, it's important to know the purpose of the national defense, or the Department of Defense, the National Defense Apparatus, whatever you want to call it, the military. It's important to know the purpose of that. And if you don't understand the underlying purpose, you're going to go astray. You have to know the purpose. Otherwise, you're not going to be accomplishing it. It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah, isn't it insane? Let me ask you, 13 years in, I'm assuming maybe during your time at West Point, maybe there was a block of instruction, but once you entered into the active duty force as an officer,
I know what you're going to ask.
You know what I'm going to ask.
I know what you're going to ask.
And I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Ask it anyway.
Right?
Yeah, it's an easy answer.
Did you receive any ongoing refresher training on, hey, just to remind you, this thing that you swore to, you should go ahead and just do a refresher reading on it to make sure you still remember what it says?
Yeah, the thing that we're going to send you to other countries for its defense of, the thing that we're going to pull you away from your family for, the thing that you could very well die for, that you've dedicated your life to, should you read that? No, we don't need that. So to answer your question, I don't think I got any training on the Constitution. And not even training, I don't even think we cracked it open. Like, we read the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, just as a family. I don't think we did that once in the military. There was no, oh, hey, Constitution Day, commanders are, hey, go make sure you read the Constitution. Not even that. Do it on your own. I don't even think there was that. It's just, it's a boring document. Why would we read that?
Why would we know what it says about what our nation's actually supposed to do, and how power is supposed to be vested in the different elements of government, and how the military is actually supposed to be supervised by elected representatives? Because we've reached this point where the military really almost functions like a sovereign nation state.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. It does what it wants. And there's units in the DoD that operate with varying levels of autonomy. There's some that are very autonomous, very secret, that are doing things that you're like, what's the purpose of all of this? It is kind of acting like its own entity that's not subordinate to much. But then what's the purpose of reading history, or how convenient is it to read history as well? You start reading history, which I read some here at Leavenworth. I took a class on the Vietnam War, and it was infuriating reading some of these soldiers' stories, and just the story of how we handled Vietnam. It was garbage. It was awful. And we knew it going in. Like, the politicians knew it going in. They knew this was going to be a disaster. And we're like, well, we don't have a choice. We got to do it anyway. We hung our soldiers out to dry. We ticked off a lot of Americans for these incorrect political strategic objectives. And you just look at what we did really since World War II, and I'm sure scholars could even pick apart World War II, but you look at what we've done in the last, say, 80 years, and it's not a good track record, just from a historical standpoint.
No, it's
what
not.
we get involved in, and yeah.
I mean, my 60,000 war dead in Vietnam, 60,000, and wars are bloody. Wars cost lives, and we've lost even more life in other wars. But you have to ask, what's the purpose? What's the cause? And I remember, especially as a PAO and someone who reads history and then started trying to research, the history of public trust in the military. And I the problem is, once you learn something, you can't really unlearn it.
You can't unsee it or unhear it. Yeah.
And I was raised to believe, it was just that the press lost the Vietnam War and the press was bad about it. And I'm no apologist for Cronkite by any means. But we were involved in something we absolutely should not have been involved in, and we had no strategic end state, and there was no clear connection to U.S. national security. So the question comes up: what were we doing there to begin with? And the Army's best answer is, well, everything went bad because of the press. I'm like, well, the more I studied this, the less I found that talking point convincing, and maybe the press was legitimately angry about the fact that 60,000 guys were being thrown into the meat grinder. And I realize it's a complex issue.
It is.
And I'm not a historian on the Vietnam War, but I say all that to say that I want to echo your point that, since World War II, the track record has not been good. I mean, there was, I think that was legitimately the last war in which we actually did any actual defense of American territory, because we recaptured the Aleutian Islands of Attu and Kiska, if I recall correctly. But I mean, beyond that, it's been, our founders warned against military campaigns of foreign intervention, and that's
foreign
really
entanglement.
That's really what we've done ever since. And you have to ask, to what purpose?
Yeah, it's been sad to see. The more you study it, the more you go, this is kind of a broken system. Not a broken system, but the way we're doing it is definitely not the way it should be. There should be so much more restraint in what the DoD does. But it was an interesting thing to navigate when it came to what's the purpose of what the DoD is doing now that's affects me and my family. It's just kind of a bizarre situation to be in.
Yeah, what was the purpose? Because the talking point, and you and I were on Fort Leavenworth at that point in time, so it was Lieutenant General Ted Martin was running the show there, and his talking point on all of his videos on then Twitter, with this
he's very active on Twitter.
Yeah, with this dog Mandu, was about the shot will save your life and get us out of the pandemic, and that was after the masks would save your lives and get us out of the pandemic. And I was just kind of waiting for him to pull out a statue of Baal and to say, well, Baal worship will now save your life and get us out of the pandemic, because it was just like,
hey, we've got this new vaccine.
Yeah, right. It was just
right
it's just like one thing after another. I was almost waiting for him to try to sell me a used car.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it was just like, what are you doing, guy? But so I remember it was August of 21, I think it was, the mandate came down, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
so you were there in CGSC. You'd had the TikTok briefing there in
so that must have been early August or right before the mandate came out. Yeah.
Now I know there was a briefing at some point where General Hill made a comment about tying your honor to wanting to get it. Was that the same TikTok brief, or was that after? Or do you know what I'm talking about?
I vaguely know what you're talking about. There's a lot of things that were said that when you hear them, you kind of cringe.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember what you're talking about with him saying your patriotism. I think he was tying your patriotism to the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a good patriot, you'll do this.
Yeah.
I think that was probably a different briefing.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but
yeah. Well, I was not present at this one, but it was a briefing to over 1,000 officers, and many of them have spoken with me about it. So I feel very comfortable it really happened. And having worked with Don Hill when he was a colonel, it's perfectly on brand.
Mm-hmm.
That he said something to the effect of, if you don't get this thing, you have no honor, you're not a patriot, and you're walking around with a loaded weapon pointed at your family members. Yeah,
that's true. I think I wrote that down in my notebook, actually, now that you mentioned that. Yeah, there was a lot of little things to kind of get you motivated to do what they wanted to. I'd say one of the weirdest situations I was in, or a kind of a pressure situation like that, but sitting in a big auditorium, you kind of feel the pressure a little bit, but nothing's going to happen, right? You're just going to all go back to your class. But I remember after they rolled it out, they were wanting every team to get counseled. So this was the thing they did. They had everyone who did not get the vaccine had to have a counseling statement with their team leader. So we were in classes of 15, 16 people. A team, I believe, was 4 of those combined, and there was a team leader assigned to those multiple classes. I don't know if that's the right terminology for the structure, but anyway, we'll call him my team leader. He was a civilian. He was a former infantry colonel, and he was, just another party man, right? This is what you got to do. He was very arrogant, and just kind of a sad situation for him. He very filled with pride. And anyway, I had to get counseling by him, which I thought was really inappropriate. You're not vaccinated. We need to know your plan to get vaccinated. That was it, right? Pretty much. So I went to his office, and it was not a fun conversation. It was, I was pretty short with him, and he was pretty short with me. He said, you can do this or this. You can get the jab, or you can put in you could put in a medical exemption or a religious exemption. Which one are you going to do? And it was just very flippant, like, these are your options, A or B, which one? And I thought, well, I don't know that I'm ready to put in a religious accommodation. You're telling me to weigh this whole thing with God and the Creator and discern what I'm supposed to do, claim His name in a religious accommodation. You just want me to make a decision just like that. So there's tons of pressure. It was rushed. And I told him, well, I don't know what I want to do yet. And I don't think the policy, maybe it was the local policy, hadn't rolled out, because obviously they have to echelon it. The DOD says one thing, then the Army has to say, hey, this is how we're going to digest what the DOD said. This is the Army policy, and they can add a little bit to it. Can't take away. And then Leavenworth is going to have to say, or TRADOC is going to have to say, this is what we're doing with it. And then Fort Leavenworth is going to have to say, okay, this is how we're handling that order. And some are just pretty quick in that process, and some take, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, for the lawyers to spin up and figure out what's the order going to be. So I'm talking with him, and he was really short with me, and I kind of gave it back to him, and and he was like, this is triple whatever, blind placebo tested, whatever the medical jargon was at the time. This is safe and effective and blah, blah, blah. And
based on all his years of medical training.
Yeah, and all his years of medical experience. Yeah. And I'm like, well, our religious accommodation has nothing to do with medical efficacy of it. So there's no way I'm going to get a medical exemption to this. Like, I have no medical justification to not get this. I don't have enough issues with my body to say that this is going to harm it. There's not really enough evidence for me to make that claim. And I think those were wildly getting denied. So I thought, okay, I have to weigh this religious accommodation, but I didn't want to take that flippantly. So I just kind of left his office like, okay, you really want me to make a decision, and I've got until next, 2 weeks from now to put in a religious accommodation. So they gave us a deadline too. They said, you have to have a religious accommodation request into your chain of command by X date. And writing the religious accommodation. So now we're kind of getting into like the meat and potatoes, the real heart of my time in this whole situation. Writing the religious accommodation was not very difficult, the act of writing it. It was first, do I even have enough justification to do this? And in my accommodation request, I think I had 3 things that I said, this is why I don't want to do this. One was the aborted fetal tissue, how it was created. Not a good way of making medicine. 2 was the effects that it could have on my body, right? But how is that a religious issue? How is that an issue with the Lord? Well, he created me, so I had to be a good steward of my body. So that's one. And the third one, which is the most polarizing, was I thought it was cultural idolatry. And I wrote that in my accommodation request. And I know that would upset a lot of people. But if you're seeing a bunch of people kind of bowing down to this thing that's seems pretty salvific, it's going to save you, you're going to be able to go to restaurants again. That's what we want to do, right? I want to be able to go to a restaurant again. I want to be able to work at my job again. I want to be able to travel again. So I'll go do this thing unrelated to those so that I can then go do those. And it just felt like there was a lot of cultural idolatry, and I didn't want to participate in that. But all of those things aside, claiming the name of Jesus or the Lord, right? Saying, God told me not to do this, is a heavy thing. And that was probably my first biggest struggle. And my second one was pride afterwards and / during. But weighing, is this what the Lord really wants me to do? Or is this just me trying to be cool and be rebellious? Which was a constant struggle, because it's kind of cool to be rebellious, you know? Like, I'm the rebel. But if you say God told me to do this and you're just kind of doing it for yourself, you're taking the Lord's name in vain. And I wrote that in my accommodation request to show them the gravity of this request that I'm putting in front of them. It's not just, I don't believe in abortion, so I can't get this, because it was derived through some use of aborted tissue, murdered babies. Just call it what it is, right? It was a weighty decision to say, God told me not to do this. And God actually did not explicitly say, Brendan, don't get that COVID vaccine. He didn't say, he didn't highlight passages in the Bible. There was no writing on the wall. I didn't dream dreams. None of that. It was just, I had to wrestle with this. Is this the right thing to do? And so it took a lot of discernment. And looking back, I can say with confidence, I did the right thing, and I followed what the Lord made evident to me. And, hopefully it's evident to other people, as they grow in their faith more and more for the next conflict, whatever that is. But putting that accommodation request in was a significant act for me. And then once I did that, it was whatever happens, happens. Because if I'm told, if I'm telling the whole world and my whole chain of command, which is non-Christian, that, hey, God told me to do this, and then I go and I get the vaccine, I've completely destroyed my witness. I totally lost all my integrity. I'm a hypocrite. It'd be worse than if I had just gotten it and just kept it to myself. So once I made the decision to, hey, is this what the Lord wants me to do? Yes, I feel strongly about that, even though I don't have a revelation. And there's going to be consequences. You almost kind of have to say, well, let the consequences come, because if this is what I'm supposed to do, life could get uncomfortable, but you know what? At least I know I'm doing the will of the Lord. And so once you realize you're crossing that threshold, you're willing to sacrifice. You should be willing to go to the grave with that and sacrifice everything you have for that. And fortunately, I didn't have to do that, right? it was just a very uncomfortable time for a 6, 7, 8 months. But once you make that determination, there's some rest that comes with that, and then you just have to kind of deal with the punches as they come.
There's a guy I enjoy following. He's actually been on the show, Dave White, and he has the saying, "Make the call." And then once you've made the call, you have to stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that's exactly where you were at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make the call and rest knowing you have discerned as much as you can from the Word, from the Spirit working in you, from your understanding of God, from your understanding of yourself. What am I prone to do? From my understanding of the culture, what is the culture prone to do? And you see all of that through the Word, the Bible, and how the Spirit reveals the Word to you. When you read a passage and you kind of go, man, that verse just jumped out at me. It really convicted me. That's the Spirit working. If you're not in the Word, if you're not listening to the Spirit or used to listening and obeying the Spirit, then it'll be hard for you to discern that, and then you'll question your call. Mm-hmm. You'll say, hey, did I make the right call? And once I did, I didn't really question it too much. I mean, sometimes you're like, am I taking crazy pills right now? Like, this seems a bit wild to have to go through this. But overall, I mean, deep down inside, my wife and I knew this is the right thing to do, and so we did it. And I could talk about the struggle with pride after that too. You think you're doing the right thing, and you look around and it seems like no one else is. Very few people are doing the right thing, and it's almost like you could feel like you have bragging rights or you're better than them. And yeah, you made a better decision than them for sure. But if you let yourself get puffed up with pride and arrogance, you're just sinning all over again, just in a different way. So how do you carry this courageous, bold act, go forward with this stance and this conviction, but also do it in a humble spirit? I was able to wrestle with those two things, the discernment to do it, and then the humility to not continuously sin after I made the call. So it was a period of incredible spiritual growth. And when you're in an uncomfortable situation, that's oftentimes the period that you grow the most. So looking back, it was not fun. I'm glad it's over. But in some regards, I don't regret that it happened, and I'm grateful for the time and the challenge I was given, because I'm better because of it. I would be worse if I hadn't gone through it.
Well, I think people like you, people like the others in the group, they grew out of it, mm-hmm. right? And you learned who you really were. We all went through it. A lot of people came out of it with the same level of character that they had before, and I would argue that is a non-satisfactory level of character. And there's some people who grew from it. I mean, it changed the whole trajectory mm-hmm. of your life, of your vocation. It did. Similar with me. I mean, we were planning on a 30-year career. I had, what looked like, as long as my continued trajectory stayed the same, it looked like I had a path to full colonel. And I decided I could no longer be a spokesman for this organization right. that would do this to its own people. And there's so many other people that it changed the trajectory. And I think it's so easy. Now here we are in 2025, where we have Secretary of Defense who used the word unlawful, and we have a president who says, yeah, they should never force that on you. And we have, just the growing body of legitimate medical research saying this was not a good thing for us to rush to. Mm-hmm. It's easy on this side of it, I think, to forget. There's this piece in the New York Times about a year or so ago that said we should just have a general amnesty, for all the people who tried to push this on you. We can't forget for several reasons. One of them being at some point we need to have some accountability for what happened. But mm-hmm. but even if you lay that to the side, how much people learned about their character and who they were through that. I mean, you probably came out of it a different person than you realized you were capable of being. I know I came out of my time, there's what you believe you would do when you're in the fire, and then there's seeing what you'll actually do in the fire and realizing,
That's right.
okay, there is something that I can cling to, and if I cling to it, then I can cling to the next thing, and I can cling to the next thing. I can't hold. And so I think we have to be really careful not to just sweep this under the rug, even if you lay the accountability piece aside, because there's so much that can be learned from it about just where we are in terms of our own character, individually, societally, collectively.
Yeah, if you're not learning from your experiences, you're wasting opportunities to either get better or, to get better. I think you either are getting better or you're getting worse. I think there's very little kind of stagnation. If you're faced with an obstacle and you don't handle it correctly or you ignore it, you give yourself another little point for laziness or complacence. And you add up 100 of those, and you are a complacent person. You are a lazy person. You are what you do repeatedly, right? So if you're continuously doing that next little thing to get better, or not compromise yourself, nope, this is my line, I don't go past that. If you're kind of letting it slip, you're moving the standard. And over time, your character degrades or it improves. And I think thinking of courage, and your podcast is about stories of courage. And I don't think it's it is one instance, perhaps, one act of how are you acting in the face of fear or danger. I'd say that's what courage generally is. But what you're doing beforehand matters as well.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't think we should say every day we do little acts of courage. Oh, I just did a little act of courage by picking up the trash. No, because now you're cheapening courage. And I think it's important to put courage in its correct place. It's rarely needed, but when you do need it, you don't have time to prepare for it. The time is now. You have to act, and if your character is unsatisfactory, you will miss that chance, and you will show yourself a coward instead of showing yourself a courageous man. So I think it's very important to be disciplined, and it's not just the military. It's my time in the Word. I mean, try to read the Word every day. I certainly don't every day, but if you're not doing that, if you're not in the Word and you're not communing with the Lord, you're going to come up short when the time is near, and you won't have that. Maybe it's the discernment to do the right thing, and you'll be deceived, or maybe it's you haven't had the discipline of strengthening your spirit and your faith, and working out your faith with fear and trembling, and then you're faced with an act that requires courage, and you don't have it built up, and you don't have enough in the tank for you to actually do the right thing. So you compromise, and then it just leads to more compromise. I think it's you're either going up or you're going down. And I think it's important for us to be disciplined, like especially now. You think, what's the next COVID? Not the COVID strain, the next strain of COVID, because we're probably on like 7 or 8 or whatever it is now. But what's the next spiritual battle? Because that's what it was. And I think collectively we totally failed. And I'm not trying to cast judgment and say like I wasn't part of the problem, but you have to look at it objectively as a culture, a collective culture, and say we definitely did not do what we should have. I didn't do everything I should have. There's ways I could have done better, but what's the next one? And how are we just enjoying our life now? Just kind of chilling after COVID and like nothing's, glad we're done with that, Mm-hmm. Well, what's the next thing that's going to come? And maybe it's actually happening right now to your soul over time. Maybe it's happening to your kids. What little things are behind you, kind of stabbing you in the back? Sin's always there. If you ignore it and just think it's going to come in massive international waves of chaos, then you're missing what's probably right under your nose. And I think it's important to be very careful to not ignore what is on your doorstep right now. What's Scripture says, sin's lurking outside your door, right? It's waiting for you. Satan's prowling around like a lion ready to devour you. So how are you preparing for that in times of peace or tranquility? I think is very important.
Well, and I love that you said, courage is not something that you just choose to do every day. That it's not like your words were, I picked up a piece of trash, I was courageous.
Yeah.
I talk about it weekly on the show, but that's a great point. Like, it's not cheap, it's not casual. When someone decides to be courageous, it's because there's been a moment that usually is unexpected, unanticipated, certainly undesired, this presented itself, and you have a choice to make. And the easy choice, is probably not the right choice. But the right choice is probably going to be hard, unpleasant, maybe even costly, and potentially all the way up to loss of life, right? And so I think that's really, when you're in the crisis, that's not when you figure out if you have it. Like, you have to be building those disciplines every day with every decision. Like, every time there's a tough call, all right, this is a chance to practice making the right call. And maybe this isn't a risky one, but you're still building that muscle. And I think we saw among far too many of our contemporaries, especially among military officers, I think a lot of institutional and governmental leaders, that they haven't been practicing that, because when the moment came, it was just an immediate, the Borg told me, and thus I do.
Almost anything in life requires time to do, right? If you're training, if you want to do a physical feat, you're probably, if it's hard, you're going to have to train for it. And that's going to take time. You're not going to get jacked in 12 days. You go to the gym 3 times, nothing is going to be different, except you're going to be more sore than when you weren't going to the gym. It's going to take you a long time, a year maybe, to make significant progress. Training academically, learning things, takes time. You can't just sit down and read a book and just download a bunch of information and you're good now. Growing up, physically growing, emotionally growing, spiritually growing, it all takes time. And if you're not taking advantage of the time, you're not going to pass whatever the test is. Mm-hmm. If you're not building, like, training for war, physically, mentally training for war, if you're not doing that and you just get flung out on a deployment, you don't know how to shoot your weapon or operate whatever your equipment is or communicate or work as a unit, you're going to get killed, right? You're going to lose. You go into a boxing ring, you're going to have to train for whatever you're doing. And if you don't realize there's a spiritual battle that was played out over COVID. It was played out as, political kind of in nature, had to do a lot with the government and mandates and whatnot, but it was a battle of the soul. I really think so. And if you are not training spiritually, you're going to lose. And unfortunately, I do think a lot of people lost, or they were deceived because they weren't building up some discernment over time. So I enjoy your podcast because you're encouraging people. I say, what's the next COVID? We're encouraging people to grow and to be more courageous, to be more prepared, so that we all will collectively stand the next test. I think that's very important.
Well, it's something very, very close to my heart, and I'm really glad to be able to do it. Let's kind of jump forward in your story. Mm-hmm. So you go through the Command and General Staff course, where you have put in your religious accommodation. And if we had more time, I would talk about my frustration with that process, because it really should be a rite of conscience. They kind of pigeonhole you into religious accommodation. But that's a whole nother topic. But you graduate, and now, because you are holding to your convictions, there's still a punitive element going on.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's where I really kind of got to know the group who had held out. And,
right.
And
why are you guys still here?
Yeah. And talk about what that was like. Sure. and what they did to you. And
real quick, there was a couple instances or incidents that took place One was my son was born, my fourth child, second son was born, and I took, I think, 2 days off of class. He was born May 2nd. I came back, we'll say May 4th. I was currently, at that time, I had orders, which is just the Army saying you're going to move to a new place to go do a different job. I had orders, and this is a very, not a coincidence whatsoever, and this is a really cool part of the story. I had orders to go to Augusta, Georgia, to work a certain job. I didn't think I'd be able to go do that job because they were starting to really crack down on travel. So they had put out this administrative travel ban where if you were not vaccinated, we weren't going to punish you under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, but we'll do what we can to kind of drive the knife into your side. So we will prevent you from traveling. So you can't move to a new duty assignment to go continue in your career. And everyone knows in the military that's going to totally destroy your career. You're going to get some lame job. You're not going to progress in your career as, the Human Resources Command requires you in your path to 20 years requires you to do X, Y, and Z. So I had orders to Augusta, Fort Gordon, and I came back from my son's birth. I took 2 days off, came back to class, checked my email, and I had an automatic email from Human Resources Command saying your orders to Fort Gordon have been deleted. You're now getting reassigned to Fort Leavenworth. It was an automated email. No one called me. No one sent me an email as a person to person. Hey, Brendan, bad news, buddy. Sorry, you're not moving. It was an automatic email. Like I changed in some inbox somewhere on HRC and some portal sent me an automatic email. So that was kind of like my welcome back. Like I had a kid, welcome back from your 2 days off. Your life is now different. And so I got stationed at Leavenworth, and I call it the broom closet job because they said, we don't really have a legitimate job for you. I was an intelligence officer. So, I had the top secret clearance. I'd worked in all of the classified environments and kind of seen behind the classified curtain. We don't have a job like that for you here, but we also kind of want to punish you. We can't punish you, so we're just going to keep you here on another job. And they just kind of made up a job for me. I worked in the Combined Arms Center headquarters for the very general who would have had to approve my religious accommodation as it went up the chain of command. And I don't even know where that thing landed. I don't know who approved it. It was just a black hole. You said process, religious accommodation process. It unfortunately wasn't a process as much as it was just a box that they put them in. Right? They weren't approving them. I don't even know if they were reviewing them. I got no feedback from anyone whatsoever, other than, "Hey, thanks. You sent it up. Like, we got it." It was never going to get approved. They had no plans on approving them. I think they approved a few at the time. There was rumors of who's got approved, and I think there were a couple people who retired or were retiring in like the next 90 days, and they would approve those to just say we approved some. See, we're actually approving some of these religious accommodations. So they could say that from a public opinion standpoint or public affairs standpoint. So I got the orders that I was going to be stationed at Leavenworth, and I knew that was going to tarnish my career. And that was after I had requested exemptions to travel. So I went through all of that, and we don't have to get into that because that was just a failed attempt. My chain of command kind of shot that down because they were company men and they were doing what was right for the institution. And that was to keep me here and make me, comply with whatever. So I went through this job for about 6 months. I graduated, stayed here at Leavenworth, right outside of Kansas City. Did that job for a few months, and I had no idea how long I was going to be here. That was really tough. So I wasn't questioning if what I did was right. I knew what I did was right. It was just a really uncomfortable time to just persevere through much uncertainty.
When I want to jump in
tough.
too for the context, like if you're not going to say the office, I won't. But I know the office you were in because it was right next door to an office that I had worked in.
Could say it.
In the informed cell,
Yeah.
right? And I know the people who are in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was up there, it was like the Temple of Dagon, but the Temple of COVID. Every single day, it was like chants of, well, we're so grateful for our shot. We're so grateful for our shot. We're so grateful for our shot. And everything they were doing was perpetuating this narrative. And that's the office into which you, who had a religious accommodation pending, were thrown. I mean, almost like if they could put you in the most uncomfortable position possible, that's what they did.
Yeah, it's working right for the man who shot down my request, or at least told his subordinates to not even let it come across his desk. Yeah, I was working not directly for, but working in a cell that was essentially doing the bidding of the general. And my role was just totally worthless. It was tough because I'm like, I'd come home, I lived on post at the time. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Like, am I going to get kicked out? Am I going to stay on post? They're going to kick me out of on-post housing. I'm going to have to find a place to rent. But what was my new job going to be? Do we have to move somewhere? So all these things are going through my mind and my wife's mind with a newborn, right? A 2-month-old kid at the time, whatever. But I'm working for the general, writing speeches, managing. I can barely even say this. I was managing the dumbest social media account imaginable. I couldn't even take myself.
Were you over the 1775 account?
No. It was the Army Leader Exchange.
Oh, that one.
Oh, it was so
bad. It's still so bad.
I'm sure it is. Because it doesn't have a good purpose.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a good purpose. So I was doing basically this waste of time job. So, at that point I had been successful in my career. I was gung-ho, like I wanted to be doing something useful. I was relatively competent, and I'm doing this job that doesn't even make sense, and I hated it. So it made the struggle even harder because now I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to have to do this. I might be here for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't know. We just had no clue what the future held. And then this is where the Lord just straight up delivered us. It was, we'll say October, November. So I had been going through this for maybe 4 or 5 months. And the COVID vaccine was out for over a year at that point. So it had been over a year of awkward, situation for me and the fam. But we had been at Leavenworth in this broom closet job for 4 or 5 months. And then the Army was getting smacked in court. Maybe it was the Department of Defense was getting smacked in court for what was a legitimately illegal vaccine mandate. It was completely illegal to mandate this because it was under emergency. What is it? EUA.
Emergency Use Authorization.
Yeah, thank you. So it was under that, so it wasn't approved, so you couldn't mandate it. Okay, so it was an illegal order. So they were starting to get some kickback in court, and they relented on this travel ban. So they now would allow me to travel to a new duty station because I wasn't, going to infect anyone with COVID because I had COVID leprosy or whatever. And the one duty station that was available at the time was the exact same duty station I had before. And my branch manager, who's in charge of all of the intel officer slating, so me and all of my intel peers, she said that was the one assignment that was available, and I was the only officer who could fill it because everyone else was spoken for because they had all moved during the summer. So this was the one thing that was open because some guy who was supposed to fill it failed his polygraph. I still had an active polygraph. So they were like, do you want this? And I remember where I was. I was driving home, and I called her. She called me, and we were talking on the phone. She kind of asked, do you want this? And my immediate response was, yeah, probably. Let me double check with my wife, but yeah, we'll probably be good for that. Because my in-laws live 3 hours away from Gordon. So we thought this would be an awesome assignment for the family. And, the next day I called her back and said, yeah, go ahead and send me to Fort Gordon. So the odds of that happening are next to none. And I just view that as the graciousness of the Lord delivering myself and my family, hey, well done. You passed the test. You went through a really uncomfortable time. You showed courage. Here you go. Move on with your life. And so we moved out of Leavenworth and we were there and lickety split. Like we moved very fast.
Yeah, y'all did. Like,
Yeah, we
I
got
remember,
out of
like,
we
one
got
day-
out of Dodge real
One
quick.
day you were there, and the next Sunday night, pastor saying, "Hey, say bye to the
Yeah.
Regans." I was like,
It was
I turned around, I'm like, and you're like,
It was quick. Yeah, it was quick. And it was almost this weird, yeah, you reminded me, it was almost this weird secret that I kept at work. Like, oh, I got out of here. Because you carry this weird leprosy stink with you if you don't have the vaccine. You know, there's this weird professional, like, oh, he's one of those guys. So you're walking around the halls. It was just very awkward.
Yeah.
Everyone knew my situation. It didn't make sense why I was there. I was doing a fake job. All of the seniors, I'm sure, knew, because they were probably all told, hey, watch out for this guy. Watch out for these group of 12 individuals because they're not part of the profession. So
They're not on the team.
You handle them. And so, of course, I got a bad eval because it was a short eval. So you're going to get a bad one because it's short. You want to get a year annual evaluation. But, of course, I was going to get a bad eval. So I left there with a bad eval from my boss for 6 months or whatever my time was there, which kind of put, not necessarily a black mark, but definitely a gray mark on my resume for the Army. And then I went to Gordon, and I just saw other issues with how that organization was run. And I kind of realized every unit I've been in is pretty dysfunctional. I don't know one unit I've been in that was really super good. There were some that were better than others. I mean, I've had some good leaders and some bad ones, but I got to this unit and I thought, I don't know if I can do this for another 7 years. It lost its luster to me. So I did a year there, and then I decided to get out, like you said at the beginning. I got out on my own terms before, I was put in another situation where they would want me to compromise, and I thought it was the best move for my family, and so I jumped ship, and here I am. I'm not homeless, like they want you to think if you get out before you retire, you're going to be homeless and you're not going to get a job and your skills don't transfer. And, we're doing all right. So it was a sweet deliverance of the Lord to assign me to Gordon, take that away, or they took it away. And then I just had to wait a couple months, 6 months, and then he reassigned me straight back to the same place. It was very sweet to move there, and we're still living there today.
Still there,
Yep.
head held high.
Yep.
And I'm so proud of you for taking the stand, man. I mean, there are just so few who did. It was just an honor to get to know you guys. I'm so glad the Lord had crossed our paths, put us at the same church, and it's especially exciting now that I'm on the outside of the Army. Just about 2 years ago now that I've left, and building my next chapter to be doing it kind of in parallel with you, and definitely looking forward to watching your continued journey and learning what I can from what you're doing, because it's just like same thing you said. They tell you like, oh, it's safe in the Army, it's safe in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And like there is life beyond. There's life beyond. Yeah.
There certainly is.
Good deal. Any parting shots for anyone else who may be faced with a similar situation?
Yeah, Scripture hits you differently depending on the situation you're in. And this Proverbs 25:26 just jumped out at me recently. Maybe it was 2 months ago. I think it was after you invited me onto the podcast, and I was kind of back in the mind of courage and whatnot. So Proverbs 25:26 says, like a polluted or like a muddied spring or a polluted fountain is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked. And when I read that,
Man,
I thought, I don't want to be a polluted fountain. I don't want to be a muddied spring. I don't want to lose my saltiness. Because when you do that, you lose your purpose. And your purpose is to stand courageously and honor the Lord and grow in godliness and live a holy and pleasing life. That's the purpose of what we're supposed to do. So if you're this spring and you're muddy, you're not doing what you're supposed to. No one can drink from you. If you're a fountain and you're polluted, also worthless. And it says a righteous man gives way before the wicked. So you can be a righteous man and still give way before the wicked. And I would just encourage whoever's listening, when you're faced with the opportunity, don't give way before the wicked. And that opportunity will probably come to all of us, and grow over time spiritually and, obviously physically and mentally, but grow over time and be ready for that day, because something will come to you and you don't want to lose that battle.
Yeah, amen. As I think Spurgeon would remind us, like this is a part of the ongoing sanctification. You have to grow through trial.
That's right.
Yeah, good deal. Well, thanks so much for flying out here,
No,
man.
thanks for having me.
This has been fun. I'm looking forward to catching up over dinner, hopefully, and continuing the
Kansas City
conversation.
barbecue.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
It's good.
Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. You betcha. I'm coming to you from the Herzog Foundation Studios in Smithville, Missouri. To learn more about the Herzog Foundation and the awesome work they do to catalyze Christian education and bring you guys like this one right here, head on over to herzogfoundation.com. To learn more about me and my other work, you can head on over to chasespears.com. And quick, anything you want to plug?
No,
No?
I'm good.
Find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Here we try to bring you great conversations that talk about courage to prove to you it can be done. It's up to you to put these principles into action. It's up to you to find your spine. So get to it. I'm Chase Spears. Thanks for listening.
Remember to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Finding Your Spine.